Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Hema Rangston, and joining us on set now, well, this lady needs absolutely no introduction. She's an expert in the communications, PR, and just what do you say, how you see it, and assessing what's being said, and what are you receiving as the message. When you talk about the government, you talk about the government's message, you talk about the PNM, the ILP, what's happening on the ground, what's being said from above, and am I really getting it the way I should be getting it? Denise Deming joins us on set. Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much, Hema. Good to be here.
Now, you know, we're talking about campaign 2015. The strategy being used, what you expect to see, and the speakers being used. Obviously, the campaigns have started on every political front.
Yes, they have.
Let's not mix any matters.
And it's hot. The campaign has started with a very intense approach. The government is certainly taking the media ground in every way. This is the first time we're seeing cable being interrupted to get government messages. And that must cost a lot of money. The government is really using the media space, the traditional media space. They're using it very well. They're saturating it. I'm not sure when saturation point will come, but certainly that, I'm sure they're measuring that, and I'm sure they'll know when to pull back and when to change the messages.
How do you determine the temperature on the ground? Because, you know, we just had an interview, and offset I was telling you, you know, looking at a speaker like Tara Sharma, I didn't expect her to come out and be as forceful as she was this morning. You have issues like that, but yet you were being overpowered by the government's message. How do you balance it? How is the government going to weigh, you know? I don't know whether it's working or not.
I don't know if the government is going to exercise the kind of balance that is required, the kind of restraint that is required to make the message resonate. Because what I'm seeing, my observation, and some analysis, is put the spend. And that is a hard sell kind of approach that you see in the FMCG category. You don't see that in the corporate category. And political communication is a little different. It requires a lot of experience, plus sound research. And well, on the area of research, I don't know what is happening, because you're getting messages from various people.
And that would have been the other point. You know, we're looking, and we have to talk a lot about the government, and other parties will come into play as well. But you have various speakers. You have speakers that are liked and that are disliked. They're going on the polls, and the polls say she is well liked, that the Prime Minister's social capital is still well within, I mean, really high. So that's their trump card.
That's their trump card. However, the incident at the football match was a significant statement. And that was a kind of communication that was spontaneous and resonated. So while on the one hand, a poll is telling you that your social capital is still high and you still lead in the popularity, on the other hand, you know, you have a full stadium being disrespectful to you. And doing it, I think it was spontaneous. A lot of commentators have talked about how crass it was. And yes, it was, but it was a guttural response. And that's the kind of key message that the people have sent. So you now have to sit and say, whoa, boy, just wait, hold up, hold up. Let's see what we need to tweak. Let's see what we need to do in order to stem that negative tide.
But, you know, when you have so much bad press, because the government has said that the media, and I think that's why they're justifying their spend, saying, well, the media doesn't give them a chance, that nobody carries good news, and that it's all a bacchanal. I mean, maybe they give us the bacchanal to cover, who knows, let's say. They're justifying their spend like that. But then you have the core issue is the team and the credibility of the person delivering the message. You know, in many crisis communications, and I did your class, so I know this, you know, the CEO will take charge of the message and say, I stand by my message. You have all these ministers and you have all these people. How would you decide, how would you advise her to move into 2015? Who will say the message?
She has to carry that message. Now, there are people in her team who have some credibility. But let's go back 5 years ago. This issue was an issue of selection. The fact that there's no credibility now goes all the way back to selection. You selected people without having a process that brought the right people to the table. And what you're seeing now is them rolling out how they really are. So they're being authentic, but they're being authentic to who they have originally been. And if you've chosen people who had skeletons, who bad baggage and so on, simply because you wanted to win, which is fine, we understand that, you have to live with those consequences now. There are ministers in there, or former ministers, or people who I call it the body bags. The body count is significant. But there are people there whom the population is in awe about. When I say in awe, I don't mean positive awe, negative awe. When you see some of the headlines, you put your hand over your mouth. And that's a significant kind of reaction, communication reaction.
Now, we're talking about the campaign shifting, and also you see something happening in the PNM as well. The front page of the Guardian newspaper today is a delay tactic by the San Fernando East constituency. They're saying, no, it's not like that. We just think Mr. Manning deserves a chance to get his voice heard and his medical records need to be in check. Dr. Rowley has a very different leadership style to the Prime Minister and a different communication style. They both appeal to different things when you hear them speak. How then do you measure them, and how do you think the PNM is shaping their campaign? Because they're choosing a whole new front line.
The PNM campaign seems to be a deliberate one, and there's a lot of conversation that the PNM does not have the traction because of the leader.
Right.
And that's a big issue. But you know, in the PNM's case, whatever you see is what you will get. So you're seeing a leader who is saying, this is who I am, love me or leave me. So the population really has a decision to make. Am I going to take someone who I think is presenting an authentic self, but not necessarily a cuddly self? Am I going to take that? Or am I going to go back to a situation in which where I've really felt betrayed? And that to me is the communication issue that both parties have to work with. One has, how do we recoup from the betrayal? And the other one is really, can we make someone who appears to be very strong and almost autocratic, can we make that person market friendly?
Now, looking at the COP, because we have some footage, and this is going to be an interesting one, going into the negotiation phase for the partnership agreement. Because the COP, let's be real, Ms. Deming, doesn't have the traction that they had in 2010. I don't know whether they can use the tagline, we are the moral compass, and we are the think tank of the Caribbean, and look at us. We had authentic people, but I don't know if they deliver the results expected.
I don't think the COP, in terms of communication, I don't think the COP is featuring in this at all. I think the COP has lost traction entirely. The COP is just there. When you go on the ground, when you hear people, when you monitor social media, COP just does not feature.
How then do you know these polls are very interesting, and you know, I was listening to Daily Knock yesterday, and he says we need an Olivia Pope for the scandals that we have here, and that's actually still one of my favorite shows. But you know, how then do you look at a campaign and see how it's being shaped? Because the PNM is obviously changing their team. So they have young, new faces, and they're selling that line, look at the team that we have. And I realize that is one of the messages coming out. The UNC have yet to determine who this team is going to be. And obviously for reasons, you don't want to say, well, you ain't coming back, because she's going to face possible anarchy from now to the election. So she has to balance those egos off. But how does she shape the message? Because they are bombarding the media. Did you know the government did this? Did you know the government? You can't pass an electronic billboard without seeing this is what your government is doing.
Her handlers are not looking at saturation. They're not looking at the negative impact of things that look like propaganda. I think her handlers are going for broke by saying, let's do the media spend. They're also doing the social media spend. I am not able to say how impactful they are with the hand-to-hand combat that politics requires. You have to win with the people, and that does not necessarily mean winning the media war or the social media war, despite the fact that the last election was called on social media, and that is likely to happen again. However, it is the hand-to-hand combat that will really determine it. I don't see how the strategy from the government's point of view can be reshaped. They're really giving you a strategy that says we have performed, and whether it's honest or not, whether it's true or not, that's a different story.
How do they then, I know we're going to go to the 7 o'clock news, when we come back we'll continue our discussion, all of the noise that's taking place, because the government is saying that their message is not being sent effectively, hence they're justifying their media spend. Now, I am old-fashioned, and I think, well, if you love me, I'll know it. If you don't, I won't feel it. And that's just really how it is, you know. The government is saying that they have to get the message out. We're going to find out how is it working and how we assess what is being said. And do you really think it's authentic? Are you feeling the difference on the ground? Stay with us.